All right, it's been a little while since our last update about the situation, the political situation inside of South Korea. Things have heated up quite a bit since then, gotten even more complicated. I'm joined by my friend and colleague Kenji Yoshida. He's been our guide through several of these videos already, and he's been following the events closely. He's been conducting interviews with people on the ground. He's been publishing in Asia Times and other outlets about what's going on in Korea. So he's back to give us an update about the political situation. And Kenji and I have the great honor and privilege of being joined today by our friend Hanjin Lew. He is an analyst, a political analyst, and an observer of politics inside of South Korea. I've known Hanjin for probably 5 or 6 years. We met at an event in Japan, and we have a shared interest in President Park Geun-hye. We wrote an article together several years back about President Park's impeachment and her treatment after that. Hanjin went to school in the United States, went to high school and college in the US, and also at Oxford in England. And he's been following this big transformation inside of South Korea in terms of society and politics and how people fall politically on the spectrum. So, welcome to you both. Looking forward to a good conversation.
Mm. Hi, Jason. Hi, Kenji.
Hi.
It's very good to see you all. So, Kenji, we'll start with you. If you can give us an update as best you can. Things seem to change by the minute.
Yeah.
But since we
Yeah.
last talked, I think it's been since then that President Yoon has been arrested and a lot of other things have happened. What's going on?
Right. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, like you said, it's happening by the minute. So, let me try to give a really short summary of what's the big issues here. So, I guess by now, most viewers are aware that South Korean politics is in a sort of a very unstable, precarious state. So President Yoon Suk-yeol was impeached by Parliament on December 14th, and after that, his powers are suspended. So in South Korea, when you're impeached by the Parliament, your power gets suspended, but you keep the title as a president. He was also formally indicted by the prosecution on January 26th. This is the first time that a sitting president has been indicted. And of course, before that, he was arrested by an investigative agency on January 15th, I believe he was arrested. And of course, it was the first time a sitting president have been arrested. All this, of course, is because of President Yoon's December 3rd martial law declaration. So it was a very short-lived, about 6-hour martial law declaration that Yoon has had imposed. And the opposition Democratic Party and those who oppose Yoon suggest that Yoon has incited and spearheaded an insurrection through this martial law declaration. So, of course, it was a martial law, so military troops were sent to several locations in the nation's capital, namely the National Assembly building and the National Election Commission building. Um, um, so the big issue, I guess, is Yoon is facing two very critical trials now. One is a trial that's pending trial right now at the Constitutional Court. 8 judges would hear whether Yoon should be impeached and formally removed from office. If at least 6 of the 8 judges uphold the impeachment motion, he would be formally removed from office. And legal experts widely predict that the Constitutional Court ruling would come around early or mid-April. And another trial that Yoon is facing is a criminal trial. And this is, of course, separate from the Constitutional Court trial. And the charges leveled against him are spearheading an insurrection. And if found guilty, he could face life sentence or even death. Although death penalties aren't really executed in South Korea for decades, but still, he could face a very heavy sentence should he be convicted of leading an insurrection. So these two trials, the criminal court trial will begin on February 20th. The Constitutional Court trial has already begun, and just yesterday they had the fifth hearing, the fifth session, and there are also sort of concerns among the Yoon's legal team and the conservatives in South Korea that the Constitutional Court would are biased and will not render a sort of fair judgment against the president. And I guess this is sort of the very basic things that's happening, but the more important things that's happening right now.
All right, thank you very much, Kenji. When this whole thing started with the martial law declaration, I was taken aback, as were, I think, a lot of people around the world. But then as I started to learn more about it, thanks to you, Kenji, and a lot of other people on the ground, I started to see some of the reasons that Yoon might have declared martial law, including a lot of suspicion about election fraud and a lot of parliamentary, seems to be tricks played by the left wing inside of South Korea. And I, of course, was thinking about President Park Geun-hye, who was impeached and treated, in my opinion, very unfairly by the South Korean left just, 7 or 8 years ago. Hanjin, you've been watching this for a long time, and in our conversations recently, you've been connecting the dots for me about how all of this sort of fits together in a big picture, changes in South Korean politics and society. How do you see this unfolding in terms of shifts in political affiliation in South Korea and also the influence of malign foreign actors like the CCP?
I have been in 2016 when the whole impeachment process against President Park started. I began to go out on the streets along with other supporters of President Park. At the time, what I saw was that this was actually a fight between the President Park and against the what I would call a totalitarianism. I mean, there are so many names for totalitarianism, such as socialism, communism, but but to put it simply, we could just use the word totalitarianism. I think nowadays, because there are so many different definitions for other words like communism or socialism or people's democracy, maybe. So just we can unify the word to totalitarianism. And what I saw happening was that President Park, she fought to defend South Korea from what President Yoon, the current president, is saying that we need to defend South Korea from anti-state forces, and that's exactly what President Park did back then. She dissolved the Unified Progressive Party at the time, which the Constitutional Court of Korea in 2014 ruled 8-1 in favor of the dissolution. She deployed THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense, to protect Korea from North Korea and China. And she adopted national textbook because the textbooks were so left-leaning until then that she needed to make sure that the Korean students were able to get the correct understanding of Korean history. She settled the comfort woman issues so that the Japan and Korea, we could start working together again, because it's urgent that the Korea and Japan work together to fight against other totalitarian forces. And she made Korean teachers and education workers union illegal. And probably the most importantly, she told North Koreans on television that to come to the bosom of freedom. Which goes directly to the heart of the weakness of North Korea. a society controlled by fear. As we all know, Kim Jong Un can no longer control North Koreans if by fear if there is a way to escape North Korea. And because this works in conjunction with the what I would say the mechanisms of what one may call a fear society, such as North Korea, the importance of this statement by President Park, it might slip people's mind because it sounds so innocent or sounds very simple. But I think that this was one of President Park's most important speeches that which could topple North Korea. And there are other things such as closing the Kaesong industrial complex. So what President Park what did was actually defend South Korea from the anti-state forces, and this is exactly what President Yoon wants to do now. But except that he hasn't really been able to do anything because of the large opposition party that kept impeaching every government officials that was trying to work with President Yoon. Um,
Right. The endless impeachments. This is something that almost never gets mentioned in the news about what's going on in South Korea. Kenji and I wrote a little bit about this, asking the question, who are the real insurrectionists? Because it seems that President Yoon, far from trying to shut down the government, he was trying to get it to start working again. I mean, the leftist parties had been impeaching people. I mean, I don't want to say left and right, just right and right for quite some time, and had been blocking all sorts of parliamentary maneuvers and uh, trying to get a sense of what's going on. I mean, some of that, really dense in the weeds parliamentary stuff is could be a little hard to understand. But Hanjin, in your opinion, you see, as you said, a totalitarian force. Are these people working inside of South Korea for, say, reunification on North Korea's terms? Are they working for the CCP for China and somehow, or are they just sort of internal South Korean communists? How are these? How would you characterize these people? What do they want when they break down South Korean government?
So basically the difference between China and America, the two G2 countries, is that when you're a friend or ally of America, all the countries that are friends with America, they enjoy the freedom and economic prosperity. But on the other hand, if you're a friend of China, then you end up getting all your economy ruined. China takes everything away from their friends, and the what I come to realize is that my understanding is that starting about I would say about 25 to 30 years ago, China started to encroach South Korea and well, globally as well. But I can only speak about South Korea because that's what I know. And the most symbolic event was the introduction of Confucius Institute, which happened first in Korea in the world in 2004. So that I would say that that shows very clearly how China wanted to and has been encroaching South Korea, and also they apply the same techniques to other countries, but they started it first with South Korea, and because of the proximity of South Korea to China, and also because of the race and so many Koreans living in China, it's so easy for them to infiltrate in South Korea and act as Koreans, and also they keep investing financially on Korean companies. They keep buying a lot of stocks of the media companies or the communication companies. There's just so many different ways that China has been stealing technology from South Korea, stealing manpower. They're doing everything they can to take Korea as a satellite country of China again.
Oh, Kenji, you've been
Yeah.
talking to a lot of people inside of South Korea, doing some really excellent journalistic work about all this. When you talk to people, on the streets, or you've spoken to people who are
Mhm.
close to President Yoon, working to support him. Do people seem to understand what Hanjin's just said, that there's a that this is about more than just an impeachment procedure. There's a big
Mhm.
civilizational shift, and people are trying to take down South Korea. Does that seem to be on the minds of a lot of people out there?
Um, well, at least those people that I spoke to in Japan aren't really sort of understanding that deeper sort of background as to
Mm,
who's behind, might be behind, all this. In South Korea, I think at least the conservatives are aware that um, that China and the CCP is at least somewhat influencing the public opinion in South Korea, and obviously it's in Beijing's interest that Yoon is obviously not their favorite candidate, I suppose. Um, I just want to add one thing, if I may. Uh, so. Oh, Lou, you gave a really good sort of overview of Park Geun-hye, and sort of this is sort of the continuation of this China's infiltration activities and so on. I think under Park Geun-hye there was also a incident where Lee Seok-gi, the very left-leaning politician lawmaker, was indicted on charges of trying to overthrow South Korean government uh, if a war broke out with North Korea,
mm,
and he was indicted and charged and convicted. And the guy who led the sort of the plaintiff side was then Justice Minister Hwang Kyo-an, um, and he is currently serving on President Yoon's defense team. He just joined recently. So all this is sort of in a way connected. And Hwang Kyo-an has seen what happened to Park Geun-hye, right,
mm.
firsthand, because he was the prime minister then when Park Geun-hye was impeached, and he became the acting president after Park Geun-hye was impeached. So he's seen all this. So I think if he joins Yoon's legal team, he'll be a really good asset. Yeah, for Yoon. Yeah, and just going back to your question, uh, I don't know. I think the conservatives in South Korea are quite aware of China, North Korea, sort of yeah, behind the scene activities and so on. And if I remember correctly, and Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the opposition Democratic Party opposed amending the current non-interference, Anti-Interference Act. So,
Mm,
a lot of countries had issues with China's infiltration, like
yeah.
Australia, Canada, and so on, and they started, making these bills, laws to prevent these interference activities. And Yoon tried to make it more strict, but the opposition Democratic Party opposed doing that.
Mm.
And there were blatant examples of infiltration, and yet they opposed doing that. So, I mean, those things, I guess, all sort of connects with the current situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
there
this
is a very strong sentiment within South Korea that's been rising up that against the Chinese living in Korea.
mm,
People, that there's a lot. It keeps popping up on all kinds of community, internet communities, that all the benefits that the Chinese keep that they get from by living in Korea, such as no tax, no inheritance tax, or getting preferential treatment for entering top elite universities within Korea. And it's there are a lot of different things that has been hiding under that has been hidden, that's coming to surface regarding the Chinese living in Korea. And also there are YouTube videos, YouTubers who have been following some Chinese students on subway, and just when they follow those students, they were going to the political rallies of pro impeachment political rallies.
mm,
So it keeps all these different um, the different activities by Chinese are keep showing up on YouTube and on social media, and a lot of Koreans are becoming coming to realize that there is actually a real danger, because I was not really want to go to the political rallies for President Yoon, um, because I he was one of the main guys um, who imprisoned President Park.
Right.
But but I was so curious, and I also could not let the other Korean conservatives who were going to the rallies out in the cold. So I went and I talked to some people there, and what I realized is that they're the same people who came to the President Park's who came in support of President Park at the political rallies back 9 years ago. And I asked them, the young people there, like, is this your first time coming here? And they say, yes. And then what I realized was that the they back then they had no idea what was happening in Korea. The common response that I get is that in 9 years ago with President Park, the YouTube was not popular back then. That most people relied on legacy media for news, and while they were aware that the legacy media could be biased somewhat, it never occurred to them that the legacy media could be so utterly fabricate news. And they all experienced the Moon Jae-in regime after that, and the economy has gone to complete ruins, and it got so bad that people do not want to re-experience another regime by the left. For one good example is under the Moon regime, Korea's real estate policy changed like about 30 times within just a 5-year period. And what they're all and so what the conservatives are saying is that we will not be deceived again this time. So there is a very strong, a very fierce opposition to the impeachment, and a very strong voice for fighting against the left. And also because of more and more people are becoming aware of the Chinese encroachment. They don't want South Korea to be communized under China, kind of somewhat like Hong Kong. So even my friends from like 25 years of friendship, they are telling me now that they understand why I went out on the streets and fight for President Park. So but the difference between the other Koreans and me are that I saw and still see the impeachment of President Park as the first attempt in recent years by the totalitarians, um, but and definitely the first attempt by China post-Korean War to subvert Korea's liberal democratic political system. But other Koreans, they see the impeachment in 2016 of President Park just as a precursor, or just a build-up for the impeachment this time. So that's one major difference. And so I keep telling them that for me, it was a lot more serious back 9 years ago. But for other people, they saying, "Oh, this time is so serious. Like you're gonna do everything we can to stop it." And I'm just like, well, it's true, but it was just so much worse 9 years ago.
Because Liu, you mentioned like Chinese people uh, participating in anti-Yoon or pro-impeachment rallies. Initially, I thought of that news and I thought I was a bit skeptical, but there were like first-hand witnesses of like actually Chinese people speaking Chinese at the rallies. And what's interesting is that like in December, the Chinese government issued a public statement, the Chinese embassy, that Chinese nationals should not participate in political activities in South Korea. So that's sort of, I guess they admitted themselves that there is Chinese people actively participating in these rallies. So yeah, it's just pointing that out. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so this time what's funny or what's interesting for me is that the lefties on the defensive and the conservatives are on the offensive. the like 9 years ago, it was the 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 young people, like people in their 20s and 30s, were the left, and they're fighting to make sure that the President Park was impeached. But now the table has turned, and the people in their 20s and 30s and the 60s and 70s, they are fighting against the impeachment of President Yoon. So the left is mostly in their 40s and 50s, and the conservatives in 20s and 30s, they're calling the leftists that they are so old. Um, and one good example is there's a radical leftist politician named Yu Min. His last name is Yu. 20 years ago, when he was 45 years old, he said that when people turn 60, their brain starts to rot and they should not hold important jobs. What he meant to say was basically that because the majority of Koreans in their 60s and older or conservatives, their opinion should not matter. But in 2023, when he became 64, and he said that Korean men in their 20s and 30s are garbage, are trash. He said this because they are mostly conservatives. So
Mm.
it's the table is turning like very rapidly.
Yeah.
And even the Korean entertainment industry these days, most of them are left, just like America, but they are hiding. They don't want to say anything these days in support of impeachment of President Yoon. And there's like when you go to the conservative side, political rallies, there are all these food trucks, buses, and buses with the heaters, so that the President Yoon supporters can rest in the out in the cold. And there's a lot of financial donations, and and some youngsters are making like songs and music videos, and they are not like corny. They are like actually good to listen to. And it's very sophisticated. So
Mm.
conservatives are turning they're getting really well organized. There's also the Korean women are known for being left, but there's also these uh, mom's community called the Right Terrace, which with a member of 8,500 members, and which they split away from the Korea's biggest mom community called the Lemon Terrace, which lemon is the fruit, and terrace is the like as in garden. And they started gaining their name recognition for sending those heated buses for the political rallies, and nowadays they're very active for Korean women conservatives. So like this, Koreans are getting organized. They're getting ready to fight, and so in a way, it's a very good sign that the Koreans are fighting for their freedom, and that and because freedom is not really something that you can just be given. Just you cannot be really ordered to give, order to be free. You actually have to fight for it, and that's what Korea is doing these days. And I see a bright side on that.
Yeah. I think Lou mentioned a very couple of very important points. And something that's quite different from what we've seen during Park's impeachment process. One is, of course, like Lou mentioned, the increasing younger generation that are out protesting or in defense of Yoon, and increasing women as well, young women. I mean, that's quite sort of the new phenomenon that we're seeing. And Lou also mentioned the new media, sort of YouTube and those who aren't sort of the legacy media that are garnering like hundreds of thousands of views every day, posting videos and interviewing people. Uh, y- Dr. Morgan, you and I interviewed Kang Yong-seok, the
Right,
lawyer
right.
and now conservative YouTuber. He's, for instance, his videos, live videos, would garner about 30 to 50,000 live audience
Um,
every day. And the total views would be like 200,000, 300,000 a day. So, I mean, so I think those are also affecting a lot. And like Lou said, YouTube wasn't really a thing when Park was impeached. So, yeah, those things are sort of the new things. And also, Park's approval rating sort of plummeted, I believe, right? Like 5% during her impeachment process. But Yoon, more recent approval rating uh, published by Penn and Mike was about 51% at this point.
51, yeah. And I think the impeachment petitioners on the National Assembly side, I think they made the stupidest mistake anyone could ever make by with their first impeachment motion, citing the that President Yoon was one of the reasons for impeachment was his quote unquote the unusual foreign policy focused on Japan, saying that the under the disguise of so-called value diplomacy, Yoon has disrupted geopolitical balance by antagonizing North Korea, China, and Russia, and taking a pro-Japan stance. So the Americans and the international community is reading this and thinking, wait, South Korean opposition party thinks this is a problem. This was a serious wake up call to the international community, I think, and help them see South Korean opposition party for who they really are, which is anti-U.S., pro-China. I think this was they. I think they really wish they could have deleted it from the very beginning. That's
Right,
it, which they did in the second impeachment motion.
right. Did they not add something on the second impeachment motion as well? Something about his pro-North or anti-North Korea policies. So I don't know what could possibly sort of motivate them to put these sort of attacking Yoon's foreign policies in impeachment motions. I mean, it's just not
It's so clear that I mean they forgot they made a mistake of showing their true identity.
right. And they did it again in the second impeachment motion that Yoon's anti-North Korean policy is inciting war and isolating
Um,
South Korea in the region. So,
they're so stupid. I cannot believe they did that.
These are really good points about the fumbling nature of the left in South Korea. That's come out time and time again these past couple of months. They've made really serious mistakes, like the ones you just mentioned, and many other ones. They seem not to know what they're doing. And I think two other big points that you both just raised. One is Hanji, and this is something you've been telling me for quite a while now, is that the leftists are sandwiched between the older generation of conservatives and the younger generation. And I think the younger generation's turn to YouTube and non-legacy media is a huge development in South Korea. And the second point I wanted to raise that which you've also just brought up is about Japan. Unfortunately, a lot of Korea watchers inside of Japan, that at least the ones that tend to be pro conservative, they also tend to be uh, a member of that generation that in South Korea would probably be the leftist generation. And so they don't seem to understand the significance of the rise of YouTube and of online media. And a lot of people in Japan who follow South Korean conservatives, they've they were supportive of President Park, but now they say that there's a lot of conspiracy theories online and a lot of crazy YouTubers are putting all sorts of misinformation and fake news on the internet. And I look at what's going on, and it seems to me that they're not conspiracy theories and it's not fake news. They're simply saying what's really happening with the influence of China and North Korea and so forth. And the Yoon being pro-Japan, it, I never really got that sense. I got the sense that he was simply being smart about diplomacy. He was neither pro nor anti-Japan. He was simply trying to keep a good relationship with a neighboring country that is in the same boat politically when it comes to protecting, freedoms inside of a country. Uh, what do you see the role of Japan going forward? Hanjin or Kenji, do you see that the people inside of Japan are going to change their views on South Korea? Do you see any support coming from the younger generation here?
uh, do you want to take it or?
Gosh, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So with this idea of pro-Japan, I mean, sure, pro-Japan compared to the his predecessor Moon Jae-in, who was
Or North Korea?
anti-Japan from North. I've never seen the opposition party complain about that. The blatant sort of, anti-Japan and pro-North, like just obvious pro-North policies. and opposition never complained about that. So, what's interesting is within Japan, there seems to be a divide even among conservatives, those who even used to be pro-Yoon,
Hmm.
who advocated Yoon and who advocated Yoon's policies, now say that, and these are some of the leading opinion,
Right.
people in Japan who form Japanese perception on South Korea,
Right.
or at least the conservative perception. They say that Yoon's martial law was wrong and he needs to be punished at least for what he's all the chaos that he has caused. And more importantly, they are against this idea that there was election fraud. And one of the reasons Yoon declared martial law was to investigate this allegations of massive election fraud going on in South Korea. And I'm not really an expert on that, so maybe Lou can talk a little bit about this whole idea of election fraud and how China is maybe somehow behind this.
Oh, well, the regarding election fraud, I mean, it's a too complicated topic that the all I can really say is that I think there is more than enough evidence to enough there that there is an ample ground to start investigation. We can say that for sure. I can say that. Um, as to whether there was actually election fraud, I don't know. But I think this is a possibility, definitely a possibility, and we really need to investigate. I just don't understand why the National Korea's National Election Commission refuses to refute any of those claims with the clear answer, and they refuse to get themselves audited. They refuse to have their securities checked by the national intelligence service. So all these things that they keep doing are keep continue to raise the suspicion for the public, and also the fact that the head of the National Election Committee is also the judge. So it's like we are suing um, uh, the defendant is also the judge. So there's no we can never get a unbiased, impartial verdict. So fundamentally, this is going to always be a problem. This is inherently fundamentally problematic. The whole structure. And as for you first talked about the YouTube, the rise of the YouTube. What I realized is that the difference between me and the other guys who said 9 years ago that they were relying on legacy media is that actually I haven't had the TV for about 20 years. I just don't use television. I have been just watching YouTube. So what I one thing that I did realize is that and YouTube requires more of active what's the word, active searching and active
Yeah.
choice,
Right.
so that I was more exposed to the news that I wanted instead of what was being fed on me. I
Hmm.
see. So that's one thing that I did realize, and I think Japan is somewhat lagging behind in terms of usage of YouTube in compared to Korea. I mean, I don't want to say Japan is slow, but relative to Korea, I think it's somewhat slower, and so I think there might be more biases. Um, and about the martial law, it's even if you ask me, I think that it's inappropriate, but it's whether it's illegal, it's totally different question,
Hmm.
because it's within a president's prerogative
Yeah.
to order it. So it's kind of like, for me, a simple metaphor would be like, if you want to put a big X tattoo on your forehead, do I think that's inappropriate? Sure, but if you want to do it's your prerogative. If you want to put it on, it's your body. Why? What? Who am I to say like what you can do? And there is a reason why president has that legal authority to impose martial law. So now the whole entire debate these days, because the insurrection charge is being withdrawn, the in uh, the core of contention now is the was declaring martial law constitutional, and that's just absurd. That's like it's kind of like if you go back to the use of a metaphor of putting tattoo on your body. It's like, are you using the right kind of tattoo ink? It's just
Right.
such a small minor detail that we are talking about the future of our Korea, of our country, and we're just talking about the whole process of declaring martial law. Was it constitutional or not? It has nothing to do with insurrection or treason, which is the only reason a president can be impeached.
Right, the left has been going back and forth, and Kenji and I have been trying to follow it, and we're getting whiplash. You know, one day we're talking about huge constitutional crimes, and President Yoon is an insurrectionist, and he's completely destroyed the constitutional fabric of Korea. And then the next day we're down to really fine little details about what he did or didn't do, and you wonder if they even know what they're trying to accomplish by going after him. It doesn't seem as though there's definitely a coordinated effort, but it doesn't seem that there's much of a game plan beyond just going after Yoon with whatever you can think of. We're getting to the end here. Final thoughts about what happens in the next couple of weeks, and it's possible to predict. I mean, nobody could have predicted any of this before it happened. But do you think Yoon survives this and goes on to save the country, or does he get taken out by the left? Hanjin, what do you think?
So what I see here is a deja vu of what happened with the President Park. There was during the trials and the impeachment process, there was a lot of high hopes. With the every step, people were saying it's impossible that President Park will be impeached for such small things, or that she'll be imprisoned for such small things. Because at the time, the major charge for her impeachment was the charge of bribery.
Mm,
But that was actually after it passed the National Assembly, the the impeachment petitioners they withdrew that one. So, and the same exact thing is happening with President Yoon. The National Assembly side, after the motion passed, they are withdrawing the charge of insurrection. So it's like charging somebody with the murder and a minor theft, and then sending him to prison, and then later on the prosecution saying, "Oh, actually, we're gonna drop the charge of murder," and then he's having to spend his whole life in the prison for a petty theft of like a lighter maybe.
mm,
That's basically the same exact thing is happening with the President Park and President Yoon, and they also had the same trials. Actually, it was worse with President Park. She had three trials a week. Right now, President Yoon is having two trials a week. So I would not really hold a high hopes, and also combine that with the global side, which is that China has been making a lot of inroads into South Korea,
mm.
building a lot of strengths, building muscles within South Korea, making sure that their voices are heard. And America has been quite, it has been weakening. Their
Mm.
power has been weakening relative to China in South Korea. So America is trying to fight again. Now, America is clearly recognizing China as their enemy and wants to make sure that they're going to fight against China. But it's not so clear whether they see South Korea as as an asset or not. I mean, they say that South Korea is an asset, but we'll have to see how it goes.
Definitely uncharted territory. Kenji, what do you think?
I would, in general, agree with Lou. And I think I just don't really trust the constitutional court. I think the system itself, the impeachment system in South Korea is just absurd. I think that the already the fact that the President Liu is suspended of his power after parliamentary impeachment. I mean, parliamentary impeachment is by definition an allegation, right? And the president gets suspended his power. I mean, but just to take the other side, maybe, just for the purpose of discussion, I spoke to a couple of attorneys very familiar with the situation right now who say that the Constitutional Court is somewhat divided right now. In the case of Park Geun-hye, it was 8-0. All eight people, all eight justices were in favor of ousting President Park. But right now, as we talked earlier, President Yoon's approval rating is very high, right? The public perception is very different per public opinion right now compared to Park. And what some legal experts say is that it's 5-3 right now, five in favor of impeaching Yoon, three not in favor. So there's actually one vacancy in the Constitutional Court seat right now, and that has to be filled. And that one seat that's currently nominated is a very left-leaning judge.
Okay.
So they're trying to get this guy in so they can get this. They need at least six votes
Six.
to uphold the motion and to oust the president. So if it's 5-3, if they can get this one guy, they can get the six. So, they might try to somehow expedite this process of getting this guy in. But there's a lot of suspicion among the public after President Park's impeachment against the Constitutional Court. And currently there is a national petition that's going out that don't know what the petition was about. If I remember correctly, it's that the Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court, who is very left-leaning, should recuse himself because of his biased position or something like that. And within 2 days, it garnered 100,000 petitioners.
Mm.
And if it passes 50,000, the government, I think, officially has to address the issue, sort of like the U.S. National petition. So I would say that public sentiment now in President Park is really, really different. And judges are oftentimes, quite influenced by, public opinion, public perception. So just, I don't know if this is, if this would affect the outcome of the Constitutional Court. I agree with Lou in many sense that I almost feel like the Constitutional Court has already decided
Mm.
to remove Yoon. But if it's any hope, I guess, that some of the judges might come to senses and rule based on the merits, not of their political alignment. And
Thank you both for this insight. I have to say this is the best analysis of what's going on in South Korea, I think, on the internet right now, in English at least. It's, when you read the regular news, it's almost impossible to get a sense of what's really going on. But your expert analysis and insights have been invaluable. Thank you so much for your time, Kenji, Hanjin. Look forward to talking with you again. I hope when we have better news to share about the future of South Korea. Thank you both very much.
Okay, thank you.